Nalan Feishua's sleeves were lifted, but only her snow-white smooth skin could be seen. There weren't any whip marks. Xiong Lan broke into sweats, and her eyes were full of panic and disbelief. No, impossible. I saw it with my own eyes. Didn't you all see it with your own eyes? Nalan Feishue was still suffering from pain all over her body. She was tearfully pulling Nalan Zhengzhe's clothes. Father, help me. I'm so painful, it's so hurt, because that bitch hit me. Father, you have to stick up for me. She was crying miserably, but her face was ruddy, her spiritual fluctuation was steady, there wasn't any scar on her body. She didn't look like a seriously injured patient at all. Nalan Zhengzhe was a fourth-rank doctor. Was it that he could still make a mistake for judging whether a person was injured? At this time, he felt that he was being fooled. He was suddenly ashamed into anger. He shook off Nalan Feishue's hand fiercely. Shut up, are you addicted to fool your father now? He pointed to Nalan Feishue's maid. What are you guys doing? Quickly bring your miss to her room. Is she still not shameful enough to stay here? The servants were panic-stricken. How did they dare to delay? They quickly supported Nalan Feishue, who was still crying, to bring her back. Mai Xiong glanced at the dull look of Xiong Lan, and she pouted. Miss, I think we should go back. Although the courtyard is a little shabby, at least no one will anger you there. So many people in this house don't like you, even a maid can frame you at will. I think it's meaningless for you to stay. Nalan Zhengzhe's face turned dark, and his fierce gaze swept to Xiong Lan. He shouted in deep voice, drag this maid who frames her master down, smash her dantian, and flog her to death. Xiong Lan shuddered, raising her head in disbelief. As she looked into Nalan Zhengzhe's cold and cruel eyes, her fear suddenly surged out like a tide. Young master, help. I won't dare anymore. I won't do it anymore. Young master, please beg master for mercy for me. Xiong Lan threw herself desperately in front of Nalan Ziyun and asked him for help. Nalan Ziyun's face also looked a bit ugly, but he said helplessly, you offended third miss. It's useless to EG me. However, I think third miss is a kind-hearted person, so I think she will forgive you when it is possible. Xiong Lan immediately understood it and turned to Hashi. He knelt in front of her and slapped herself in the face. Third miss, my mind was possessed by evil thoughts, so I would only dare to frame Miss Third Miss. Please be merciful and spare my life. Woo woo. Third miss, please spare my life. Hashi looked at Nalan Ziyun with a smile, and she slowly said, younger brother is really kind-hearted. He is even willing to plead for his maid. However, when your sister was being framed just now, why didn't you saying something for your sister? Before Nalan Ziyun had time to say anything, Nalan Zhengzhe's face immediately became even uglier. He said coldly, why are you guys still standing there? Quickly drag this cheap maid down. Don't let her disgust third miss again. Soon, a manservant of Nalan Mansion rushed up and dragged away Xiong Lan, who was crying. Nalan Ziyun looked at the direction where Xiong Lan disappeared, and his eyes flashed a dark light. His resentment against Hashi deepened a bit more. Nalan Zhengzhe looked at Hashi. At this time, his gaze was considered amiable. Hashi, now that you have returned to Nalan Mansion, you will naturally be the third miss of Nalan Mansion. Please go to https://www. Novel updates. CC The King of Hell is Genius Pampered Wife to read the latest chapters for free. It was just a maid who couldn't see the situation clearly. Father will naturally punish her for you, and you don't have to be angry with Ziyun for a maid. Ziyun is soft-hearted since he was a child. This is exactly the same as your mother. The two of you are brother and sister. You must get along well in the future, then your mother can only be at peace in the afterlife. Hashi glanced at Nalan Ziyun and smiled. Please be assured, father. I will definitely get along with Ziyun well. Nalan Zhengzhe's words and expressions became more amiable. Since there was such an incident today, and Hashi, you are frightened, so the matter of visiting your mother will be delayed until tomorrow. You should go back to rest. It wasn't until Hashi's figure disappeared around the corner that Nalan Zhengzhe said to his son with a gloomy face, come into the study room with me. As soon as they entered the study room, Nalan Zhengzhe took a seat in the chair and slammed. Ziyun, what did you do just now? Did you forget what I told you to do? I asked you to build a good relationship with her, but what the hell are you doing? What if the relationship between you two worsens? Nalan Ziyun stood panicky in front of Nalan Zhengze, but his eyes were indignant. Hearing Nalan Zhengze's last words, he suddenly said stubbornly, if it worsens, then let it be. That useless trash is not my sister. Thinking of the ridicule and humiliation Nalan Ziyun had received, his handsome face twisted. It is because of such a useless sister, so I will be ridiculed no matter where I go. Father, I really don't understand. Nalan Hashi is just a worthless waste. Her existence will only be a shame for Nalan family. Why are you protecting her so much? Isn't she better be dead rather than living? Nalan Zhengze frowned and said nothing as he listened to Nalan Ziyun's complaint. After a long time, he sighed, Ziyun, you are my most valued son. I send you to the palace as a prince's companion, and spent a big price to send you to Qixing Palace to cultivate. Do you think I will hurt you? Father, I don't mean that. Nalan Ziyun quickly said anxiously, I just don't understand that Nalan Hashi is a useless waste at all. Why do you still protect her? You even let me please her and approach her. When I think of this kind of useless person as my sister, I wish I could kill her and let her disappear in this world. Nalan Zhengze's eyes were gloomy, and he didn't scold Nalan Ziyun's cruelty. Instead, a smile appeared on the corner of his mouth. Ziyun, your character is exactly like me when I was young. Well, since you care so much about Hush's identity, then I will tell you the truth. But you must ensure that everything you hear today can never be said to the third person, even the elders in the family. Nalan Ziyun only felt his heart beating. He had a hunch that he was about to hear a big secret. Even his breathing became slow subconsciously. But he said solemnly, Father, rest assured, I will keep my mouth tight. Nalan Zhengze nodded and remained silent for a long time before slowly saying, Nalan Hashi is indeed not your sister. Her brother died as early as a dozen of years ago. What? Nalan Ziyun's eyes widened abruptly. Father, what do you mean? Am I not your biological son? How is this possible? Please go to https://www.novelupdates. CC the King of Hell is Genius Pampered Wife to read the latest chapters for free. Don't panic. Nalan Zhengze stood up and patted Nalan Ziyun's back. He said with a soft tone and an amiable and gentle face, You're my real son of Nalan Zhengze. This can't be wrong. But your mother is not an Lingyu. And, Nalan Zhengze stopped a moment, and deep jealousy and resentment were reflected in his squinted eyes. Nalan Hashi is not my daughter. Nalan Ziyun's eyes widened sharply. Nalan Hashi, she is not your child. Is it true about what mother said? And Lingyu is really a slutty woman. Not only she was dishonest to her husband, she even gave birth to the child of another man. Shut up. Nalan Zhengze shouted fiercely and slammed heavily on a chair on the side. The chair creaked, and it shattered into powder. Nalan Ziyun was shocked. He stared at Nalan Zhengze in fear and trepidation with a pale face. He didn't understand why his father suddenly burst into rage. Nalan Zhengze took a deep breath. After a long time, he calmed down and said, This person and this matter will not be mentioned in the future. Nalan Ziyun hurriedly bowed. But his eyes glanced at Nalan Zhengze secretly. Seeing his gruesome and twisted face, he couldn't help but feel a little palpitations. Nalan Zhengze's eyes filled with too much lust, hatred, longing, unwillingness and jealousy, and they finally all turned into greed. Nalan Ziyun quickly lowered his eyes and whispered, Father, since Nalan Hashi is not your own daughter, why should you protect her? Isn't it better to let her die? Nalan Zhengze wiped his face, and when he lowered his hand, his expression had returned to normal. He said with a deep voice, Because Nalan Hashi has an Lingyue's relics on her hands. All you have to do now is to build a good relationship with Nalan Hashi and let her think that you are her real brother, then find some ways to get an Lingyue's relics. What relics? Nalan Ziyun frowned. If the relics are real, can you just let Nalan Hashi take them out? I don't believe she dare not take them. Nalan Zhengze frowned. I don't know exactly what the relics are, but it must be related to medical skills and pill refining. I have probed Nalan Hashi several times. She should not know that the existence of these relics, or that she used not know. But now she may not be. What does father mean? Nalan Zhengze's eyes looked complicated and distant, and his voice had a strong emotion, and Lingyu is a shocking talent, and she is so wise. She would never let her daughter be so mediocre. She must have kept those secret books with a secret method, then sealed them on Nalan Hashi. Only those who trigger certain conditions can open them. Don't you find that now Nalan Hashi has changed from her previous self? I think the seal on her may have been unlocked. Nalan Ziyun hadn't seen Nalan Hashi before, and he only heard about her before, so he didn't have any deep feelings about it. He frowned. Even if she isn't a coward anymore, Hashi is still just an ordinary person. I'm sure she doesn't have any spiritual power fluctuations. If An Lingyu really left something for her, how could she still be a waste? Nalan Zhengze suddenly took out a medicinal pill and said to Nalan Ziyun, "You should know about this medical pill, right? Please go to https://www. Novel updates. CC the King of Hell is Genius Pampered Wife to read the latest chapters for free." Nalan Ziyun took over the medicinal pill, and his expression suddenly looked stunned. This is the best spirit healing pill of Shengde Hall. Now these superb spirit healing pills' price had become a sky-high price. Shengde Hall sells medicinal pills every day, but people will fight for the best quality pill they sold immediately when there is stock. Nalan Zhengze nodded. I suspect that An Lingyue's relics have been unsealed because of this medicinal pills. These medicinal pills give me a feeling very similar to the medicinal pills that An Lingyu once refined. I suspect that the person behind Shengde Hall has already gotten An Lingyue's relics. Shi Yu. Nalan Ziyun exclaimed suddenly. Nalan Zhengze was startled. Shi Yu? Nalan Ziyun said in agitation, "Father, Shi Yu is one of the person in charge behind Shengde Hall. It is said that the person who made the best quality pill is the master of Shi Yu. He even healed Ouyang Haoxuan's broken veins and developed an antidote for the blood drunk in the sealed dragon domain's secret territory. Most importantly, I met him on Breaking Spirit Mountain once, and he mentioned about Nalan Hashi to me." Nalan Zhengze's pupils shrank suddenly. He said with a trembling voice, Shi Yu, it turned out that the young miracle healer who can heal broken vein and tendon is him. He even knows Nalan Hashi. It seems that I guess right. Someone got An Lingyue's relics and learned the powerful pill refining technique. As he said, his face was twisted. He clenched his fists hard. Those things, those pill refining technique, and those miracle healers' reputation and praise, should be mine. They should belong to our Nalan family. Damn bitch, I have kept her for so many years. She found the relics, but she didn't hand the relics to me. Instead, she gave the relics to an outsider. The child who has no blood relationship with me will never be mine. Bitch. Nalan Ziyun's expression also twisted. It turns out that the praises that Shi Yu could get were all because of the relics obtained from Nalan Hashi. There are strange medical skills in it. There is also the powerful pill refining technique. Maybe there is also a powerful cultivation book. If I get it, I can also be high above like Shi Yu. I can be the limelight. No. I will be more powerful than Shi Yu, making both Xie Chen and Shangguan Qi to respect me and look at me with differently. That things are clearly belong to me, but Nalan Hashi actually gave it to Shi Yu. This bitch, this waste, no wonder she has a maid with unfathomable strength. That must be given to her by Shi Yu. This Shi Yu must have seduced Nalan Hashi so that he could let my useless sister to hand out An Lingyue's relics without holding back. Thinking of this, Nalan Ziyun affirmed his guess more and more. He also told Nalan Zhengze about the maid around Nalan Hashi. Nalan Zhengze also became more determined. He gritted his teeth and said, "This ungrateful bitch who helps the outsider with our family's property, when I get the relics, I will let her suffer a living death." Nalan Ziyun also took a deep breath. "Father, the most important thing now is to take An Lingyue's relics from Shi Yu. Or maybe Hashi still has the relics in her hand." Nalan Zhengze nodded and said, "You bring Nalan Hashi to Shengde Hall these few days to probe them. It's best if you can see Shi Yu. Find some ways to let Nalan Hashi take back all the relics. Please go to https://www. Novel updates. CC the King of Hell is Genius Pampered Wife to read the latest chapters for free. I will also check Naylan Hashi here to see if I can find clues from her. We must have Enlingue's relics in our hands. This is our hope for the rise of Naylan Mansion. Naylan Ziyun nodded his head with a smile full of greed. As long as I can get those pill refining and cultivation books, I will one day be able to trample on Shiyu under my feet. By the time, let's see how arrogant can he be in front of me. The two father and son looked at each other and smiled. Their expressions were full of greed and excitement. But they didn't realize that at the corner of the room, a small gecko was laying there quietly, listening to the conversation between the two. After 15 minutes, everyone in the study room left. Only then the little gecko carefully left the study room. The little gecko quickly returned to the room where Hashi lived. As soon as it entered the room, he shook his head and turned into a cute little Tyrannosaurus. He shouted, "Boss, listen to me, I heard a shocking news." Hashi was drinking the tea made by Azhu in her room at this time. Azhu's character was cold and she was not good at cooking, but she did know how to make an excellent tea. Hearing the little golden dragon keeping shouting, she couldn't help laughing. What's the shocking news? For example, I'm not Naylan Zhengze's biological daughter. The words that little golden dragon wanted to say suddenly went back into his mouth. He stuttered after a while, Boss, so you knew it already, but how did you know? Hashi sneered as she said casually, I guess it. What did they discuss? You tell me in detail. Little golden dragon did not conceal, and he immediately repeated the conversation between the two. At the end, little golden dragon couldn't help laughing. Boss, don't you think they are very funny? In the end, I even heard Naylan Ziyun said that Shiyu seduced Naylan Hashi to get Enlingue's relics. They actually said that you seduce yourself. Ha ha ha. Hashi didn't laugh, but she showed a dignified expression. Little golden dragon smiled for a while and found that something was wrong. He couldn't help but looked serious. Boss, what's wrong? Hashi frowned. They said that my real younger brother was dead. Little golden dragon nodded. Seeing Hashi's gloomy eyes, he quickly said, Boss, don't be sad, even if your younger brother is dead, you still have us. Hashi forced a smile and nodded, but she still somehow felt sad in her heart. Hearing the news that Naylan Hashi's younger brother was dead, she felt as if her chest was being pressured by a boulder, making her unable to breathe. But it was just a stranger that she had never met. But, is Naylan Hashi's brother really dead? Hashi remembered that Naylan Yangming regarded her as his younger brother in the Baikao garden. He clearly said that his younger brother was missing instead of dead. Little golden dragon hovered in the air for a while, then he suddenly remembered something. He quickly said again, by the way, boss, there is something very strange. There is a very powerful enchantment in a corner of the study room of Naylan Zhengze. I only got a little closer, and I felt a terrifying power. Moreover, it's just a little bit closer. Naylan Zhengze actually discovered and looked back. I think he must have hidden something in his study room. Hashi narrowed her eyes. You're almost at the early stage of the golden core. That enchantment can actually terrify you. Please go to https://www. Novel updates. CC the King of Hell is Genius Pampered Wife to read the latest chapters for free. If I remember correctly, Naylan Zhengze is just at the gold core stage, right? Little golden dragon nodded again and again, so I dare not explore again, and I return immediately. Boss, if you want, I can go and explore at night. No need. Hashi shook her head immediately. I will live in Naylan family for quite some time anyway. They want to find relics from me, then their fox's tails will be exposed eventually. As for the study room, I'll explore it sooner or later. I'm not in a hurry now, lest inadvertently alert the enemy. Speaking of which, Hashi could not help frowning. I always feel that there is some kind of trump card in Naylan Zhengze's hands that I don't know of. This makes him so certain that Enlingue's relics will fall into his hands. Before we get to know about this trump card, we shouldn't act rashly. Naylan Mansion, in the bedroom of Naylan Feishue. At this time, Naylan Feishue was still lying on the bed. Her hair was scattered, her face looked haggard, her brows deeply wrinkled, her mouth kept moaning painfully. "Miss, if you are really uncomfortable, take some medicinal pills to replenish your chi. Out. Get out." Naylan Feishue opened the medical pills handed over by her maid, then she said hysterically, Why did Dad not believe me? It was clear that the slut beat me. Why did Dad believe her instead of me? I want to kill that bitch, sell that bitch to the slave market and make her a slave again." As Naylan Feishue was scolding hysterically, the door was pushed open, and Mrs. Naylan came in with a nervous face. "Feishue, I heard that you were injured. Which worthless slave made you hurt? Mum will punish her for you." "Mum." Naylan Feishue cried out when she saw Mrs. Naylan. "Mum, it was that bitch Naylan Hashi, she beat me. She whipped and even insulted me, but Dad didn't believe in me. Mum, you have to stick up for me. It's that bitch again." Hearing Hush's name, Mrs. Naylan's face twisted. She remembered her stupidity of that time, and she often woke up to find that she was making some strange moves. Sometimes she was lying beside the pit with her face covered with feces. Flies and bugs were buzzing in her ears. Sometimes she ripped off her clothes and squatted in the middle of the yard, laughing and singing with disheveled hair. Sometimes she was hiding in a dog hole, learning to bark like a puppy while she kept digging the ground. Every time she woke up and thought of her shameful act, Mrs. Naylan couldn't wait to kill herself. Her reputation was completely lost. The next time people looked at her, there was no longer the awe of the past. Instead, they always laughed at her and gossiping about her secretly. Naylan Zhengze thought of various ways to treat her, but she couldn't find out what disease she had, and there was no sign of being poisoning. In the end, Naylan Zhengze could only diagnose as she was suffering from soul dissociation disorder because she was furious about Naylan Feishue's marriage. In order not to let her be embarrassed, Naylan Zhengze could only shut her in Hengfang courtyard and prevent her from going out. The manservant would bring meals to her every day. As time went by, Mrs. Naylan's illness became more and more serious. Her heart was full of despair and panic. In the end, she even secretly asked people to send a letter to her family, Murong Mansion, hoping that they would send a capable doctor to heal her. Mrs. Naylan, formerly known as Murong Yaru, was a miss from Murong family. Among the 4 major families in Yangjing City, Naylan family and Murong family were equally famous. Please go to https://www. Novel updates. CC The King of Hell is Genius Pampered Wife to read the latest chapters for free. Mrs. Naylan believed that as long as her parents knew her situation, they would surely save her from suffering more. But who knows, the person who delivered the letter brought back a shocking news. Murong Mansion was exterminated. Her brothers and parents were all killed. Mrs. Naylan was infuriated and vomited a lot of blood. Since then her disorder had become even worse. This terrible situation continued until her eldest daughter Naylan Yurong, who was studying abroad, heard about her situation and sent her a medicinal pill. After taking the medicinal pill, Mrs. Naylan felt refreshed, and the disorder never occurred again. Mrs. Naylan lived like an animal for these few months, and she thought she was furious because of Naylan Feishue's marriage, so she naturally hated Hashi to her core. At this moment, when she heard my daughter mentioned Hashi, she couldn't help but gritted her teeth and said, "That bitch. If she didn't frame you to have a relationship with the Zhu family's fat pig and set you up to marry him, how would I get crazy due to anger and sadness? It's that bitch's fault that Mom had to live like a dog for the past few months. If your sister didn't get the medicinal pill from her master, I can't imagine how I would end up. Who knows that the bitch is still not satisfied after framing us. She even dared to beat you up. I will never forgive this bitch." Naylan Feishue was shocked as she shouted, "Mum, who did Naylan Hashi frame me to marry? Who is the dead fat pig of the Zhu family?" Naylan Feishue had just returned to Yangjing City, and now that the time had passed and the situation had changed, the initial gossip no longer existed. She didn't even know the fact that she was engaged to Zhu Zhongba. As Mrs. Naylan was helpless, she told Naylan Feishue about what happened previously as well as the marriage decided by Naylan Zhengze and the Zhu family. Naylan Feishue seemed to be struck by lightning. She was dumbstruck. After she reacted to it, she immediately burst into tears. "Mum, I don't want to marry the fat pig. I don't want to marry him even if I die. I wasn't sold to the gluttonous house, nor have I got any relationship with Fatty Zhu. All this was done by Hashi. Mum, you must help me." Mrs. Naylan hugged her crying breathless daughter with consolation. "You can rest assured, Feishue. You are my precious daughter, and you are extremely talented. You have achieved the foundation establishment stage at a young age. How can the fat pig of the Zhu family be worthy of you? Just let that Hashi bitch marry him." "But Dad," Naylan Feishue cried as she throbbed the bed angrily, "why is Dad so biased toward that bitch? She obviously just an ugly bitch with no cultivation base, useless waste." "Woo-woo, what if Dad doesn't agree? You can rest assured. Your mum has contacted your elder sister to come back to support you." Naylan Yurong was arguably the best existence of Naylan family's generation. There wasn't anyone else like her. At the age of 20, she became the disciple of the great elder, Master Shukong of the Doctors Association, great with outstanding talent and a top-secret recipe of the Naylan family. Although there were many disciplines under Master Shukong, there were only a few girls. Naylan Yurong was a rare beauty, so she was the favorite of her master and fellow disciples. In addition, Naylan Yurong also fought for herself. She became a fourth-rank doctor within 10 years after becoming Master Shukong's disciple. Her pill refining skill had also become the third rank. Even her cultivation had also reached the condensation period. Such an excellent existence made Naylan family regard Naylan Yurong as the future of the Naylan family. Even Naylan Zhengze looked proud when he talked about his elder daughter. Mrs. Naylan's disorder, that even Naylan Zhengze was helpless, was healed by a pill that Naylan Yurong got from Master Shukong. Thinking of this daughter, how could Mrs. Naren not be proud? Even if Murong family was exterminated, as long as her daughter was still there, her status in Naylan Mansion would not be changed. Naylan Feishue was overjoyed. She grabbed Mrs. Naylan's hands and said, "Mum, are you telling the truth? Elder sister is really coming back. She will really stick up for me. I have received the news from your elder sister that she will be here in a few days." Mrs. Naylan's eyes looked sullen as she said coldly, "You can rest assured. Just let that little bitch be arrogant for 2 more days. When your elder sister has arrived, her good days will come to an end." Naylan Feishue nodded again and again. Her hands were violently grasping the quilt under her. Even blue veins burst out on the back of her hands as if she was screwing Naylan Hashi's head at the moment. "That's right, I have to endure until elder sister comes back. With elder sister supporting me, I want to see how arrogant can the bitch be." The next day, Hashi greeted her dear brother Naylan Ziyun early in the morning. Naylan Ziyun's attitude today was several times more gentle and friendly than yesterday. She personally led her to meet Mrs. Naren, who greeted her along the way, and said that she was prepared for the maid who was waiting for her. "Sister, you are my dearest family beside Dad. We will help each other in difficulties in the future. I will protect you so that you will not suffer anymore. So, sister, if you have any need, you must tell me." Hashi responded casually with an "oh." Naylan Ziyun suddenly felt that his enthusiasm was poured into the ice water. There wasn't even a splash of water. He gritted his teeth in anger, but he still smiled gently and amiably on the surface. His eyes were glittering as he looked at Hashi. It looked like their relationship was profound, and they trusted and loved each other. When approaching the Hengfang courtyard where Mrs. Naren was staying, Naylan Ziyun couldn't help but ask the question that had buried in his heart. "Sister, I dreamed of my mum last night. Mum was crying in my dream. It was so heartbreaking. When I woke up in the morning, even my pillow was soaked in tears." Naylan Ziyun said while expressing a sad expression. Hashi raised his eyebrows and watched his performances. She half smiled without talking. Naylan Ziyun felt spooky being watched by her. He couldn't help smiling. "Sister, don't you want to know why Mum was crying?" Hashi chuckled lightly. "At least it wasn't because her daughter is not filial. At least I never saw my mum crying in my dreams." Please go to https://www. Novel updates. CC the King of Hell is Genius Pampered Wife to read the latest chapters for free. Does that mean her son is not filial? Nalan Ziyun gritted his teeth, ignoring her words, and continued, Mum told me in my dream that her medical skills were more superior than anyone. Her name was going to be remembered by generations, but she died very early. She died before she could get famous. Seeing that Nalan family's medical skills are dying, she wants to help by passing her knowledge to you and me and pass so that we can be successful. However, it can't be done. Sister, do you know what Mum was saying? Did Mum leave anything before she died, and she needs us to carry forward her legacy? Hashi pursed her lips and said slowly, left something before death. Maybe there is. Nalan Ziyun's heart was throbbing excitedly. He shouted, what is it? Hashi continued, maybe not. I can't remember it. Do you still have an impression? Hehe, we were all still in our babyhood at that time. After that, she no longer bothered about Nalan Ziyun and quickly walked into the Hongfang courtyard. Nalan Ziyun, who was left behind, experienced ups and downs in his mood. He was so angry that his blood was boiling. Even his gums were being bitten until bleeding. As soon as Hashi entered the Hongfang courtyard, she felt a cold gaze staring at her. As soon as Hashi looked up, he saw Mrs. Naran sitting on the main seat. At this time, Mrs. Nalan looked much older and haggard than she first saw. There were many fine lines at the corners of her brows, and her sideburns were mostly white. Her plump face was skinny now, making her cheekbone obvious. Her face looked older than her previous look. She was sitting in front of her and staring at her fiercely, her gloomy eyes seemed to smash her corpses, and the green muscles in the temple jumped suddenly because she couldn't bear it too much. Hashi couldn't help laughing when she saw her. Oh, so that's the case. She thought that the carefree powder on Mrs. Naran was really cured. This carefree powder was a formula she researched in her previous life. It could suddenly stimulate the corpus cavernosum in the human brain, making people crazy. Hashi had originally thought that someone in this world could cure the poison of carefree powder, and she was excited to have a match with this master. But now she knew after seeing Mrs. Naran. Carefree powder was cured yet, it was just suppressed. Treating the symptoms but not the root cause, it seemed that the toxin was suppressed for a period of time, but when the longer it gets, the more intense it will be when it rebounds. Once the poison loses control, Mrs. Naran would completely lose her mind, she would become crazier than a madman. She couldn't wait to see Mrs. Nalan's performance at that time. Mrs. Nalan saw Hashi looked at her with cold eyes, and Hashi was even sneering. She didn't intend to hide it at all. She immediately raged, how impudent are you? You don't know how to greet when seeing your mother-in-law? Slap her hard for me and teach this wicked girl some manners in this house. The maid that was assigned with a task immediately looked at Hashi with hostile. Just before she was close to Hashi, Nalan Ziyun rushed out and pushed the maid away, shouting, whoever dares to hurt my sister will have to step over my body, Nalan Ziyun. With that said, he quickly turned around and looked at Hashi with concern. Sister, are you okay? Don't be afraid, I will protect you. No one can hurt you. Hashi really wanted to applaud Nalan Ziyun's dedicated spirit and superb acting skills. Please go to https://www. Novel updates. CC the King of Hell is Genius Pampered Wife to read the latest chapters for free. This guy had changed his attitude 180 times since he knew her identity and value of use. Sometimes Hashi even had goosebumps when she heard the words he said, and he could shout it out without psychological hindrance. Mrs. Nalan's facial muscle was twitching due to anger after being disturbed by Nalan Ziyun. She raised her voice, how dare you? Nalan Ziyun, do you know what you are doing? Who gives you the courage to hurt my maid? I give. Are you done? The majestic voice of Nalan Zhengze came from outside the door. When he saw Nalan Ziyun protecting in front of Nalan Hashi, he showed a satisfied expression. Then, his eyes were dark. When he looked at Mrs. Naran, her eyes were full of disgust and impatience. What are you shouting at? Can't you be like a family mistress? Hashi and Ziyun are both children of my Nalan family. You as a mother should take good care of them. Is this how you take care of them? Mrs. Nalan still wanted to say something. When she met Nalan Zhengze's fierce eyes, she suddenly froze, and she dared not speak again. Nalan Zhengze waved his hand and said, "Okay, Hashi, you have already greeted. You can go back. If you aren't comfortable staying here, just talk to Ziyun. If anyone in this mansion dare to bully you, Dad and Ziyun will support you." With that, he glared at Mrs. Naran as if he was warning her, "If you let Hashi feel aggrieved again, don't blame me for keeping you in this Hungfang courtyard, and you will be able to see anyone." Now that Murong Mansion was eliminated, Murong Yaru was a person of no use in Nalan Zhengze's eyes. And after seeing the madness of this woman, Nalan Zhengze didn't want to approach her even one step. He was disgusted when he looked at her. After he instructed, he didn't have the patience to bother about it, and he left hurriedly. Nalan Ziyun remembered the conversation he just had with Hashi and hurried up. In the room, only Hashi and Mrs. Naran were left, as well as some maids. Mrs. Naran couldn't regain her mind for a long time. Our eyes were full of shock, sadness, and despair. When she looked at Hashi, her eyes were filled with crazy hatred to tear her apart. "Bitch, what did you say to Fool Master? You little bastard. Don't think that you can keep showing off in Nalan Mansion. I tell you, I will definitely let you be utterly discredited, let you die the same as your mother." Before Mrs. Naran finished her words, her vision suddenly turned black. Immediately after, a slap hit hard on her face. As Hu returned to Hashi's side after slapping, she coldly said, "Her mouth is too dirty, let me make her shut up." Hashi smiled and gave Qing Luan a admiring look. Then she looked at Mrs. Naran. Mrs. Nalan covered her face and looked at the girl with a normal appearance in disbelief. She felt that she was more and more unfamiliar with Nalan Hashi. Is she still the humble and pitiful girl who could only kneel in front of me and cry? Why is her eyes so sharp? Why is her smile so infiltrating? Seeing Hashi approaching her step by step, Mrs. Naran stepped back with a frightened hand. She shivered. "You, what do you want to do? I tell you, if you dare to touch me, you will not get away with it." She looked at the maids around her in terror, but what she saw was that they were all knocked out by Hashi's maid. Please go to https://www. Novel updates. CC The King of Hell is Genius Pampered Wife to read the latest chapters for free. Hashi walked slowly to Mrs. Naran, squatted down in front of her, reached out, and gently stroked her pleated collar. Mrs. Naran shuddered as her teeth giggled. At this moment, the girl's clear voice slowly passed into her ears. "Murong Yaru, do you think that I'm still the former Nalan Hashi who used to be bullied by you?" She got close to Mrs. Nalan's ear and whispered, "Let me tell you a secret. The Nalan Hashi was dead before, and died in the hands of your baby daughter, Nalan Feishue. Now the person standing in front of you is the Hashi coming back from hell. You tell me, how should I retaliate against people who had bullied me before? You. Mrs. Naran's pupils contracted, and her body cramped. The fear on her face had become chaotic and mad. Hashi stood up with satisfaction. She no longer looked at Mrs. Nalan on the ground, then she left the Hungfang courtyard slowly. A moment later, a hysterical cry of Mrs. Naran could be heard from Hungfang courtyard. "Ghost, ghost. She is a ghost. She is here to kill. No. She is a monster, she's a terrible monster. Save me. Come and save me." The shrilling cry spread to every corner of Nalan Mansion, making everyone panic. In the afternoon, the news of Mrs. Nalan's disorder relapsing reached Hashi's ears, and she couldn't help laughing. How can this be considered a relapse? It's just a small appetizer. The real show is still behind. She said earlier that these people owe Nalan Hashi debt, and she will one day take them all back for her. My name is Kui Zhu. My name is He Xiong. We are specially selected by the young master to serve Miss. Two well-dressed and pretty maids stood in front of Hashi and saluted her respectfully. Both of them behaved in a respectful manner. They did not have the arrogance of Xiong Lan at all. The clothes they wore were made of silks. And what was even more rare was that they also had the rank 5 to 6 of Chi Refiner. This kind of strength wasn't common even among the manservants and butlers. Hee-seong took a step forward and smiled amiably. We are originally the first-class maids who personally serve the young master. Before coming here, young master specially told us that you are his sister, so we must serve you well. Kuiju also bowed. Miss, if you have any need, you can tell us. We will help you get it done. Hashi and Ching Luan didn't respond to their words. Mai Seong had a strong sense of crisis instead. These two maids look better than her, their cultivation is comparable to me, and they even know how to talk nicely. If Miss really treats them as confidants, what should I do? Seeing that Hee-seong was about to step forward to support Hashi, Mai Seong immediately stepped forward and squeezed away Hee-seong. Miss doesn't like stranger touching her. Hee-seong was staggered, and her pretty face immediately showed an aggrieved expression. The tears were about to drop in her eyes, and she looked at Hashi like she wanted to talk but couldn't. Hashi tapped Mai Seong's head. She was just smiling without talking. She didn't even look at the pitiful Hee-seong, but she walked out of the courtyard to assess this Shin-yu house. It was too late yesterday, so she could not take a closer look. Now she realized that this Shin-yu house actually gave her a wonderful sense of familiarity. Please go to https://www. Novel updates. CC The King of Hell is Genius Pampered Wife to read the latest chapters for free. No, or it should be said that this is the feeling of the original master's memory. There seemed to be a distant and blurry scene in front of her eyes. Two naive young children were chasing and playing with each other. On the window sill there was a young woman leaning gently on the window and looking softly at the children in the garden. The gentle expression could pamper the children very well. She couldn't wish to give the best in the world to her children. The scene was very vague, she couldn't see the face of the woman and the boy at all, but she just felt that the scene was very warm and very happy that she even had a hint of envy. Is that the mother and brother of Nalan Hashi? Are they really dead? Kuiju saw Hashi staring at the scene in front of her in a daze, and she quickly whispered, "Third miss, you don't know that Shin-yu House is the best courtyard in the whole Nalan mansion. When Mrs. Anling was still alive, Master specially renovated this Shin-yu House because of his love for Mrs. Anling. Since Mrs. Anling died, Master was heartbroken. He sealed this year as he was afraid of missing Mrs. Anling. No one was allowed to enter. Now that Master let Miss move it. It can be seen that Master really cares about Miss." Hashi regained her mind, then she replied with a half-smile, "Oh, is it?" Kuiju faced Hushi's eyes as if they could see through everything, and she couldn't say a word for a while. Mai Seong could not help but ridicule and said, "If he really cares so much, why would he let our Miss stay in another courtyard for a dozen of years without visiting her? Ph, crocodile tears, who knows what is he planning? You can go now. Tell you that my Miss doesn't like strangers to follow her. You all stay away from Miss." Both Hee-seong and Kuiju lowered their heads, concealing the look on their faces, but they did not listen to Mai Seong at all. They still followed Hashi step by step. Hashi glanced leisurely at half of the yard, then she walked back to the room. In fact, even if she didn't go out, she knew that the courtyard was full of spies. The security here was actually tight. Nalan Zhangze and Nalan Ziyun are really crazy about Enlingyue's relics. If they know the whereabouts of Enlingyue's relics, they would probably rush over and tear her into pieces. However, looking at their impatient look, they probably can't wait for long. As expected, Hashi could not help laughing as soon as she smelled the seemingly odorless smell of her food. The people of the Nalan family really deserved to be a medical family. In addition to poisoning, they can't seem to find another way. Although my own method is mainly based poison as well. Hee-seong placed the meals to Hashi. Seeing Hashi didn't pick up the chopsticks for a long time, she couldn't help but urge, "Third miss, these are the best dishes chose by the kitchen. They are still hot. Why don't you taste it first? If you don't like it, I will ask them to change immediately." Hashi looked at her with a smile. "Oh? Look at you, it seems that these meals are really delicious. Why don't I reward you with a bowl and let you eat it first?" Hee-seong's face suddenly turned pale, Her hands trembled nervously. No, it's fine. I don't dare to. How can a maid simply eat master's foods? Can master don't make fun with me? It's fine if you don't eat. Do you have to be scared like this? Hashi chuckled lightly. Since that's the case, then I will eat it myself. Please go to https://www. Novel updates. CC The King of Hell is Genius Pampered Wife to read the latest chapters for free. Seeing Hashi tasted every dish, Hee-seong's anxious heart was relieved. She lowered her eyes and secretly looked at Hashi's tasting the food slowly. Her face revealed a contemptuous smile. This third miss really thought she is a real miss of the Nayland family. She doesn't even know that her one foot is stepping in the Hell Gate. After seeing Ha-seong take out the dishes, Ching-won looked nervously at Hashi. Miss, is there poison in the meal? I see the girl's eyes seem sneaky. The dishes are obviously something wrong. Why do you still eat it? Hashi took a sip of tea, then she sneered, they want to poison with me, intestine sever powder? Are they underestimating me? Don't worry, I'm fine. Ching-won remembered that Ching-long had said the medical skills of her princess were magical, and she was relieved. She secretly laughed at herself for borrowing troubles. No one could basically cure Master's cold poison, but the princess can even control the cold poison in Master. Why would she worry about the insignificant poison of the Nayland family? Hashi raised her eyes. How's the progress of your investigation? Ching-won heard the words and quickly said, I have received the news from Wu Yu. The Nayland family did rise suddenly about 16 years ago. Relying on several rare medicinal pill recipes, Nayland Zhengze's medical qualification has risen all the way. Eventually, he was promoted to a third-rank doctor. But in fact, at that time Nayland Zhengze did not qualify for the Doctors' Association, and the status of the Nayland family as the four major families was not stable. It seemed that they would be excluded at any time. But about 11 or 12 years ago, Nayland Zhengze suddenly took out a kind of medicinal pill called Juku Lingshan pill. This kind of medicinal pill can almost revive a dead person and grow flesh out of bone. In short, it is very magical and powerful. Nayland Zhengze used such a medical pill to become a member of the Doctors' Association, and he also sends his daughter Nayland Yurong to be Master Shukong's discipline. Hashi did hear about Juku Lingshan pill. She didn't care about it initially, but at this time listening to Ching-won, she had a strange thought in her heart. 11 or 2 years ago. Wasn't that when Nayland Hashi was suddenly sent to the courtyard? Ching-won continued, but it is strange that no one can find out the main medicine of Juku Lingshan pill, and no one has seen the prescription. The process of making Juku Lingshan pill, Nayland Zhengze never let the other person do it. Every pill is done by him in the study room alone. No another person has seen the production process of Juku Lingshan pill. As-hu shook her head firmly, no one. Hashi frowned and contemplated in deep thought. It seems that I have to infiltrate Nayland Zhengze's study room if I want to solve the puzzle. Suddenly, Purple Abyss Vine lurking underground made a slight tremor as a reminder. Purple Abyss Vine reminded Hashi that there were many masked black-shirted men lurking around her house. Each of them had the cultivation of the Meridian stage. Hashi couldn't help but sneer. She once again felt how anxious the father and son of the Nayland family was. As expected, at night, a knockout smoke infiltrated through the door cracks and window eaves. Immediately afterward, several black-shirted men entered the room silently and searched the room. However, as soon as they entered the room, their vision went dark and lost consciousness. Hashi emerged from the darkness, kicked one of the black-shirted men, and let Ching-won give him a pill. The black-shirted man woke up and screamed as soon as he saw Hashi. Please go to https://www. Novel updates. CC The King of Hell is Genius Pampered Wife to read the latest chapters for free. Ching-won squeezed his throat tightly, and her eyes were flashing a killing intent. The black-shirted man was horrified. His mouth was widened, and his eyes were full of pleading. Hashi looked at him condescendingly and whispered, I ask, you answer. Don't say anything redundant, Otherwise I can only use soul search. Who sent you? The black-shirted man opened his mouth, but he realized that he could not make a sound. He could only try his best to say 3 words with his mouth shape. It is master. Sure enough, it is Nailan Zhengze. What did he ask you to do? This time, Qing Luan finally let go of the black-shirted man's throat, but she put a dagger on his neck. The black-shirted man said in a trembling voice, Master asked us to check everything that Miss has touched during the day, and he also let us dispose of the 2 personal maids brought by Miss. Hushi nodded slowly and smiled, I understand. Just dispose of him then. As Qing Luan heard that, her eyes were still indifferent. The dagger on the black-shirted man's throat swept fiercely. The black-shirted man didn't even make a sound, and he was dead. Smelling the bloody smell in the room, Hushi frowned, preventing Qing Luan from moving. Purple abyss vine silently drilled from her sleeve, swinging her leaves excitedly. The next moment, Qing Luan was shocked to see that the purple vines rolled up a few people on the ground and started crunching them. After about the time for 2 incenses, several corpses on the ground disappeared without a trace. Not just flesh and blood, but even clothes, bones, and furs. It was like they vanished completely. Hushi took back Purple Abyss Vine and touched its trembling tail. She pampered her while reprimanded, this is an exception. You have to avoid cold and raw food in the future. You will have stomachache for eating those messy foods. Qing Luan shivered. She suddenly felt that the princess, whom her master liked, wasn't an ordinary person as expected. Nailan Zhengze was anxiously pacing in the study room for a day, but he couldn't calm down at all. This time, the door of the study room was knocked and Nailan Ziyun hurried in. Nailan Zhengze hurriedly asked, How, have you found the trail of those death warriors? No. Nailan Ziyun shook his head. Dad, did you make a mistake? Nailan Hushi doesn't have any cultivation. The maids around her are just at the qi refining stage. They don't look like they can kill 8 meridian stage experts. Moreover, I checked all around her house today. There is no trace of fighting and blood. I don't think anyone has died there. Nailan Zhengze's frown was still tight, and he became even more restless. But those death warriors were clearly sent by me to investigate Nailan Hushi. Why would they suddenly lose contact? Is it that someone is helping that slut? Could it be the Shi Yu that you mentioned? Did he kill all the death warriors I sent? Nailan Ziyun shook his head and snorted. Although Shi Yu's medical skills are superb, his cultivation base was only at the foundation establishment stage. Father, you sent out 8 meridian stage experts. Even if Shi Yu came, how could he deal with them? And today I took Nailan Hushi to Shengde Hall. No one in Shengde Hall knew Nailan Hushi at all. I was even being ridiculed by those ignorant servants. Please go to https://www. Novel updates. CC The King of Hell is Genius Pampered Wife to read the latest chapters for free. Thinking of what happened today, Nailan Ziyun felt sullen. Today he took Nailan Hushi to Shengde Hall to look for Shi Yu. He specially asked them to announce the name of Nailan Hushi. Who knows, the manservant of Shengde Hall mocked him for trying to buy medicines without having to line up by relying on a close relationship. The martial artists who had been waiting in line ridiculed him for a while, making him unable to retreat from the embarrassing situation. Nailan Ziyun gritted his teeth and said, Dad, I don't think we have to make a fuss about Nailan Hushi. She already gave Enlingyue's relics to Shi Yu, then she is it's worthless. This trash with no cultivation and an ugly look, can Shi Yu put her in his eyes? Maybe, Shi Yu took Enlingyue's relics and abandoned her, leaving only 2 useless maids for her. I think it's better to find some ways to get Enlingyue's relics from Shi Yu. Nailan Zhengze's expression was unpredictable for a while, but in the end, he gritted his teeth and said, Wait. There must be some secrets hidden in this bitch. Hihi, she thought she can fight me, stop dreaming. Bitch, she is just as ignorant and ungrateful as her mom was. As long as I still have that trump card in my hand, everything that Enlingyu left will be mine one day. Ha ha ha. Nailan Ziyun glanced at Nailan Zhengze's crazy smile, and there was a doubt in his eyes. What is the trump card in father's hand? Hushie's been in Nayland Mansion these past few days. She had been in this foreign world for a long time, but she had been cultivating, pill refining, or fleeing non-stop. So, she could actually rest during this period. Drinking tea during the day and watching Nayland Ziyun and Nayland Zhangze putting up an affectionate play. In the evening, she occasionally played with the death warriors sent by Nayland Zhangze. Sometimes, she let them return without getting anything. Sometimes, she killed them all. It was also a pleasure to watch Nayland Zhangze being suspicious and panicked, but he still had to repress himself the next day. Of course, the hysterical roar of Mrs. Nayland and the curse of Nayland Feishue were indispensable. On the whole, these daily turmoils were also quite interesting. The only regret was that Hushie had never been able to enter the study room of Nayland Zhangze. She also found some ways to explore. But as soon as Purple Abyss Vine approached the study room, she felt a sense of danger and immediately retrieved Purple Abyss Vine. Hushie was thinking about how to get into the study room, then she saw Haxiang walk in and said, "Third Miss, Master requests to see him." "Where to?" "Master and young Master are waiting for you in the study room." Hushie was suddenly happy. It's really what I'm hoping for. Nayland Zhangze's study room was large. As soon as Hushie walked into the study room, he felt a strong sense of discord. It was as if the space here had a strange twist. At this time, Nayland Zhangze was sitting at the desk, holding a picture in his hand and looking attentively. Nayland Ziyun was already standing in front of the desk with a respectful expression and shallow sadness. Nayland Zhangze slowly placed the painting in his hand on the desk and unfolded toward Hushie and Nayland Ziyun. His face was full of sadness, and his voice was full of nostalgia. "Ziyun, Hushie, come here and take a good look. This is your mother, Enrich." This was not the first time Hushie saw Enrich's portrait. Please go to https://www. Novel updates. CC The King of Hell is Genius Pampered Wife to read the latest chapters for free. This portrait of Enrich was a bit different from what Nayland Yangming showed her, but it was still the unparalleled beauty that could make the whole world move. The woman in the painting had a cool look, and her brows were thin. Her expression that was looking in front was just like a noble princess or the fairy from heaven. Enrich in the painting had a face very similar to Hushie, but her expression was completely different from Hushie's impression. The woman who leaned against the window and looked at Nayland Hushie had a pair of tender eyes and a gentle smile that would even enthrall the sun, moon, and stars. However, Enrich's eyes in the painting were extremely cold like a blade. Moreover, Hushie couldn't help but look at Nayland Ziyun beside her. I look so similar to Enrich, but Nayland Ziyun doesn't have any similarity with her at all. Of course, he is a fake one, so it's reasonable if he doesn't look like Enrich. Nayland Zhangze's fingers lightly touched the edge of the portrait, and his voice was filled with deep sorrow. "Your mother was very talented and beautiful in her lifetime, and it is precisely because of your mother's help, we Nayland Mansion will only have our current status today. It was unfortunate that she passed away in her early life. Your mom's body was not in a good condition after giving birth to you too. She passed away a few years later. Whenever I think of your mother, I will feel so sad that I can't eat and sleep. I was even more afraid you two would be sad, so I sent you two separately to another courtyard and the Qixing Palace since young. Ziyun, Hushie, you won't blame me, right?" Nayland Ziyun hurriedly said, "Don't say that, Dad. You sent us away because you love Mom too much. Why would we blame you? Hushie, don't you think so?" Hushie chuckled lightly. "Since brother said so, then that's the case." Nayland Zhangze was a little dissatisfied with Hushie's weird tone, but he still continued, "Ziyun, Hushie, your mother told me during her lifetime that when she passed away, she would leave the most important things to you for custody. You can take it out when Nayland Mansion is in a crisis so that you can let Nayland Mansion regain its prestige. Of course, your merits for Nayland Mansion will also be remembered. In the future, all the resources of Nayland Mansion will be left to you." Nayland Zhangze then sighed, "To be honest, now our Nayland Mansion is in crisis. In this Yangjing city, There is a powerful force in the dark that wants to annex the 4 major families. Now Murong Mansion and Ouyang Mansion are gone, our Naylan Mansion will be the next. For Naylan Mansion, are you willing to give me the things that your mom left for you to save the Naylan family? Of course we are willing, Naylan Ziyun said quickly. We are the people of Naylan family, we have the blood of Naylan family. The honor and disgrace of Naylan family are related to our future. If the mom's relics can save Naylan family, I think mom will certainly be willing in the afterlife. Sister, do you think so? Hashi smiled without saying anything. She just let him perform as he wished. Naylan Ziyun said anxiously, but father, mom's relics are not with me. Sister is older than me. Mom had asked sister to take good care of me. I think mom must have given the relics to sister. Sister, now that the situation is critical, you should hand over what mom left behind. Hashi showed a timely confusion on her face. I'm sorry, I don't understand what you are saying. You said that mom left relics, so what are the relics? Does the clothes that mom made for us count? Please go to https://www.novelupdates. CC the King of Hell is Genius Pampered Wife to read the latest chapters for free. Sister, why are you still acting silly at this time? Naylan Ziyun slammed the table angrily. His face was full of anger and doubt. You're also a part of the Naylan family. Naylan family gave birth to you and give you the identity of third miss. Is it that you want to be ungrateful and disregard the life and death of father and me? Not to mention, mom's relics also belong to me. Sister, you take possession of mom's relics and gave them to a man who has nothing to do with our Naylan family. Are you not afraid of mom scolding you for being unfilial and unrighteousness when you are in the afterlife? Hashi blinked, and a deep smile appeared on her face. Brother really loves to make a joke. If sister really got mom's relics, how could I only live in a deserted place like the courtyard for more than 10 years without having enough food and clothing? Even a servant could simply whip and insult me. I wouldn't be sold to the slave market under Naylan Feishua's instruction, and I don't understand what brother is saying. You said that I gave mom's relics to an unrelated man? Who did I give? Do you dare to say that you didn't give the best quality pill prescription to Shengda Hall? Do you dare to say that you didn't give mom's relics to Shi Yu? Naylan Ziyun stared at her fiercely. He said hatefully, I'm your younger brother. Naylan Mansion is your home. We are the close kin that takes good care of you, but you gave mom's relics to a stranger instead of us. Naylan Hashi, do you think you are right? Hashi smiled while watching Naylan Ziyun being angry. She walked in the room unintentionally. When she walked to a corner of the study room, she clearly felt a powerful enchantment. She saw Naylan Zhengze's nervous face. Although he tried hard to suppress it, his eyes were fixed on her as if he was afraid that she would find out something. Hashi stopped and looked at Naylan Ziyun, and she said in a grievance, Brother, I don't know what you are talking about. If you want to put the blame on me, you will always find a way. If you don't like sister, I will just go back to the courtyard. Naylan Ziyun was choked by her words. His face was red, and his eyes were full of resentment. Naylan Zhengze looked at Hashi's unremarkable yellowish face coldly. His eyes were sullen and gloomy. For Naylan Hashi, he had exhausted all his patience these several days. Since Hashi stayed at Xinyu House, he searched Xinyu House and the courtyard at Kang Mountain, but he still found nothing. Moreover, the death warriors sent out would disappear after some time. Even their shadows had disappeared. Naylan Ziyun was also trying to please Naylan Hashi in all ways. She was so cowardly and obedient previously, but now she had such an ignorant attitude. He took her to Shengda Hall, but the people of Shengda Hall didn't seem to know her at all. Naylan Ziyun was even humiliated several times by the people of Shengda Hall. Naylan Zhengze felt that this daughter seemed to need a lesson. She would be full of herself if he didn't teach her a lesson. Thinking of this, Naylan Zhengze's mouth made a mocking smile. She said coldly, Hashi, you may not yet know our current situation of Naylan Mansion. Do you remember the young master of the Zhu family? Yesterday they visited and asked to set the wedding time for the previous marriage affair, and they will come to send betrothal gifts. They will marry our Nayland Mansion's daughter this month. Please go to https://www. Novel updates. CC the King of Hell is Genius Pampered Wife to read the latest chapters for free. Nayland Ziyun expressed his indignant expression in a timely manner and exclaimed, "Father, the Zhu family is a merchant family. Fatty Zhu is even uglier, he doesn't even have the foundation establishment stage cultivation. He actually dares to marry the daughter of the Nayland family forcefully. Isn't this not taking father in his eye at all?" Nayland Zhengze sighed and said helplessly, "Ari, Ziyun, you don't know that the four major families are weak now. We Nayland family is being threatened. We are no longer the powerful family. If we can get the relics left by your mom to make Nayland family strong again, then we naturally will not be afraid of the threatened power of the Zhu family. Hashi, if we can't think of a way out, father may not even be able to protect you. For the rise and fall of the family, father can only marry you to the Zhu family." Nayland Ziyun immediately shouted anxiously, "Father, how can that be? Don't you know that how many concubines does Zhu Zhongba have in his courtyard? How many girls did he robe? I even heard that he likes to torture his concubine and servant. If sister marries him, how miserable would her life be?" Nayland Zhengze also made a sad expression, "Ziyun, dad is helpless. Do you really want me to watch the Nayland family fall?" Nayland Ziyun quickly looked at Hashi, "Third sister, why are you still hesitating? Is the mom's relics more important than your lifelong happiness? As long as you hand out mom's relics, how can father marry you to Zhu Zhongba, that disgusting scum?" Hashi raised her eyebrows, and she said with a smile, "Why do I remember that the person who is going to marry Zhu Zhongba is the second sister? What does it have to do with me?" Nayland Zhengze was not angry, but he said meaningfully, "Hashi, you maybe don't know. Your elder sister has already written a letter that she will be coming home in a few days. You know the identity of your elder sister, she is a member of the Doctors Association and also the disciple of Elder Shukong. Her position and right of speech in Nayland family are one of the highest. Even father can't disregard your sister's opinion. Fei Xue is your elder sister's blood sister again. If your second sister doesn't want to marry, the Zhu family won't force it due to your elder sister's identity. However, the marriage between Nayland family and Zhu family has decided already. For the face of both families, someone must marry the Zhu family. As such, only you can be the replacement of Fei Xue and marry. Of course, if you are willing to surrender your mom's relics, our Nayland family will be strong enough to support you all the way." By the time, why would father be afraid of the Zhu family? By the time, father will find you a good family to marry. Even if you want to marry into the royal family, it is just a piece of cake. Speaking of which, Nayland Zhengze looked at Hashi with fiery eyes, and he slowly said, "Hashi, you are so smart, you should know which are more important. You should know what to choose, right?" This was a direct threat. Hashi almost couldn't help but laugh out loud. I really force Nayland's father and son too much. They even stop playing the affectionate show and threaten me directly with the marriage. If I hand over and Lingyue's relics, everything will be fine. If I don't hand it over, I must marry Fatty Zhu. Hehe, it's really interesting. Hashi seemed to inadvertently smooth her hair. She silently threw a seed of purple abyss vine into the terrifying array in the study room. The seed of purple abyss vine had not yet grown, so it didn't have any intelligent and spiritual fluctuation. It was similar to an ordinary bean, so the enchantment wouldn't respond to it certainly. There was an innocent look on her face instead, "But Dad, I really don't know what relic Mom left behind. How do you let me hand it over?" Nayland Zhengze and Nayland Ziyun's face suddenly turned gloomy. There was no longer the fake affection in their eyes. There was only coldness coming out from them. "Since that's the case," Nayland Zhengze said slowly, "since you are so stubborn, then don't blame Dad for doing nothing. The Zhu family will send someone to send the betrothal gifts in these 2 days. 7 days later, they will carry you to the sedan chair. You can only rely on, and in the days to come, do it yourself. With that said, as he was about to chase Nalan Hashi out of the study room, he suddenly heard hurried footsteps outside the door. Master, Master, the Crown Prince is visiting us. Crown Prince. Nalan Zhangze took both Nalan Ziyun and Nalan Hashi out of the study room, then he carefully locked the door before asking the manservant who was out of breath. Why would the Crown Prince visit our Nalan mansion? Nalan Ziyun's expression remained unchanged, and he smiled proudly. Father, have you forgotten? The Crown Prince is my second fellow apprentice at the Qixing Palace. It is normal for him to visit me. A smile appeared on Nalan Zhangze's face. Just about to give Nalan Ziyun a word. As he was about to praise Nalan Ziyun, the manservant shook his head repeatedly. No, I heard that this time, the Crown Prince is here to make a propose. Propose? Nalan Zhangze and Nalan Ziyun exclaimed at the same time. Immediately, Nalan Zhangze's face quickly showed a happy smile. He already knew whom Prince Shangguanqi had come to propose for. It must be his second daughter, Nalan Feishue. Nalan Zhangze heard Feishue talk about it more than once. She had encountered the Crown Prince while traveling, and he took good care of her. His eldest daughter, Nalan Yurong, was gifted and distinguished. A prince of the Jinling kingdom wasn't worthy of her. But his younger daughter was different. If she could marry to the Crown Prince, it would be a great help to their Nalan family. Thinking of this, Nalan Zhangze's smile became gentle. Ziyun, you follow me to entertain the Crown Prince. Let the servant to prepare the spirit fruit and refreshments. Then he looked at the manservant. You immediately notify second miss, saying that the Crown Prince is here to propose. Let her dress up quickly. Don't lose her manner in front of the Crown Prince. After speaking, without even looking at Hashi, he left with Nalan Ziyun. Hashi smiled slightly. She did not care about the prince, and she walked slowly toward Xinyu house. The manservant was left standing in place, scratching his head in confusion. After a while, he murmured, but the Crown Prince is proposing to third miss. Why is this related to second miss? After thinking for a while, the manservant hurried to the second miss room. Regardless of whether the master's order was right or wrong, he just had to follow it. What? You said that the Crown Prince is here to propose. Nalan Feishue bounced off the bed suddenly. Because she touched her wound, she grinned in pain, but the joy on her face couldn't be concealed. Mrs. Nalan was also full of smile. Are you sure that the person who came to propose is the Crown Prince instead of the fat pig of the Zhu family? Hey! We have reviewed and lowered the benchmark of all of our Patreon community goals. Please do check it out. The manservant hurriedly said, It is true. The Crown Prince even brought a few large boxes of betrothal gifts, indicating that he is here to propose. Why didn't he discuss it with me? Nalan Feishue covered her flushed face and said shyly, I'm not mentally prepared at all. Mrs. Nalan drove the manservant off, and she said with a happy face, Silly girl, he is the Crown Prince, and he has a lot of opportunities every day. How can he have time to discuss with you? Now that he is willing to come personally to propose, it means how important you are to him. Mother Tilda Nalan Feishue yelled nonchalantly, then she hurriedly said, Qin, quickly, take out my set of pleated Luanfeng natural silk skirt, and that set of 8 treasure azure stone jewelry. In the main hall at this time, Nalan Ziyun and Nalan Zhangze were already warmly hosting Prince Shangguanqi. Shangguanqi held the teacup in his hand and raised his eyes to assess Nalan Mansion. Although there was a gentle smile on his face, he could not hide the arrogance and pride in his eyes. In Shangguanqi's view, he was the Crown Prince of Jinling Kingdom. Except for the Emperor and the untouchable King of Hell, the other people in Jinling Kingdom were just his subjects. It was natural for them to treat him respectfully. He could condescend himself to come personally to the Nalan Mansion to propose. The people of the Nalan Mansion were of course in fear and trepidation. But after all, Nalan Ziyun was once his fellow apprentice, so his attitude was a little more casual. "Your Highness, you like my second sister. How come you don't tell me at the Breaking Spirit Mountain and Chishing Palace? I heard you and my sister know each other a long time ago. How did you two meet?" Shangguan Qi was taken aback. "I remembered that I'm going to marry the third miss of the Naylan mansion. Did I remember it wrongly? When did I meet Naylan Feishue?" When he was about to express his doubts, he heard a maid saying, "Master, Madam, and second miss are here." After that, there was a gust of fragrance in the room. Immediately afterwards, Naylan Feishue elegantly came up to the main hall while Mrs. Naylan's hands. When she saw the crown prince, Naylan Feishue's face flushed. Her almond-shaped eyes were full of water, they looked shy and timid, and they seemed to contain a lot of affection. She bowed to him. "Greetings to your Highness." Naylan Feishue looked. Shangguan Qi stared at her affectionate eyes, her bulging chest and delicate curves, and his eyes revealed a hint of amaze. Naylan Feishue had just dressed herself up for a long time, and this was the effect she wanted. At this moment, seeing the infatuation in Shangguan Qi's eyes, she immediately smiled brightly. "Brother Prince, it has been a long time since the last time we left Fanyun Mountain. Feishue has always missed the brother prince. If you didn't help Feishue in the Fanyun Mountain, I don't know how much hardship I have to suffer. I really didn't expect brother prince to come to our Naylan mansion today." At the end, her face was flushed, and she lowered her head shyly. The well-behaved and submissive look was completely different from her usual stubborn, willful, domineering look. Naylan Zhangze was extremely satisfied. He just wanted Hashi to replace Naylan Feishue to marry Zhu Zhongba, so that she would be tortured by Zhu Zhongba. By the time, she would know the benefits of the Naylan family. When she was desperate, Ziyun and Zhangze would help her again. He didn't have to worry about her not handing over Enlingyue's relics. It was just that the Zhu family was considered to have some power in this Yangjing city. If he exchanged Hashi for Feishue, he was afraid that the Zhu family would disagree. After all, the appearance of Hashi was really lackluster. Zhu Zhongba had always been greedy for beauty. How could he be fond of Hashi? When the time comes, if Zhu family's father and son really stirred up the trouble, they still don't know how it will end. However, it was different now. Now that the crown prince came to propose to Feishue, even if the Zhu family was powerful, could he still compete with the crown prince? As long as the crown prince speaks, even if the Zhu family is dissatisfied, they can only submit to him. By the time, the Zhu family would have to agree with marrying Hashi. Thinking of this, Naylan Zhangze showed a smug smile on his face. Shangguan Qi quickly recollected his thoughts from Naylan Feishue's beauty. He showed a look of doubt on his face. "I come here to marry Naylan Hashi, not Naylan Feishue." Before Shangguan Qi could speak, he heard the loud noise of gongs and drums coming from far. Then he heard Zhuichun, the master of the Zhu family, shouting, "Be careful, the things in there are expensive. If any one of those things breaks, you can't even afford to pay with your life." As soon as Zhuichun, he had already led Zhu Zhongba strutting into the main hall. Without seeing for a few months, Zhu Zhongba had gained a bit of weight again, and his cultivation was still at the foundation establishment stage. On the contrary, his footsteps were light, his eyelids were swollen, he looked he had overindulged in sexual activity. Especially the fat figure, the flesh on the waist and face trembled when he walked. It made people sick to look at. As soon as Zhuichun entered the main hall, he saw Naylan Zhangze, he immediately laughed and said, "Brother Zhangze, we will be a family in the future. Based on our marriage, please promote my son in the future." As he said, Zhuichun's gaze swept away, and he quickly saw the dressed-up Naylan Feishue. "This is the second miss of Naylan family, right? Whoa, you are really charming. You are already at the foundation establishment stage at a young age. My Chongba is really fortunate to have you to be his wife, ha ha ha." When Zhu Zhongba saw Naylan Feishue, his eyes straightened, and the saliva flowed down from the corner of his mouth. He shouted vaguely, "Sister Feishue, we will be a family from now on." "Who is a family with you?" Naylan Feishue encountered Zhu Zhongba's squinted eyes and felt disgusting. Just after shouting a word, She immediately lowered her head in a grieve. There were tears in her ears. At this time, the Crown Prince was here. She couldn't be too gaff and left a bad impression to the Crown Prince. Nayland Zhangze gave a light cough. He frowned in displeasure. Master Zhu, please pay attention to what you say. Don't you see who is here now? Zhu Yichun was taken aback. When he saw Shangguanqi by the side, he immediately looked in fear and trepidation. Greetings to the Crown Prince. Seeing Zhu Yichun pulling Zhu Zhongba to kneel to kowtow, Shangguanqi showed a satisfied expression on his face. He liked to see others' respectful and fearful attitude. Zhu Yichun stood up after doing that. He rolled his eyes and immediately smiled and said, "Since the Crown Prince is present, that is great. Today, it is really the honor of the Zhu family for having the Crown Prince witnessing the marriage between my son and Nayland Mansion's second miss." Before Nayland Zhangze could say anything, Mrs. Nayland shouted immediately, "Master Zhu, we did not promise to marry Feishue to your Zhu family." Patreon community goal update. It's now 44% away from the first goal, keep it up. What? Zhu Yichun immediately raised his eyebrows when he heard the words, and he said angrily, "You dignified Nayland Mansion actually turns back on your words. It was also in this hall that day, it was Nayland Zhangze personally agreed with me, and the sixth prince was also there. After I went back, he reported the marriage to the noble concubine. Now that you want to go back to your words, aren't you afraid that the world will laugh at you when they know this? Aren't you afraid that the noble concubine will punish you?" Mrs. Nayland shrank her neck when Zhu Yichun yelled, but she immediately felt confident when she saw the Crown Prince sitting aside. "So what if he is the sixth prince? Didn't you see the Crown Prince sitting next to you? Could the sixth prince and concubine be bigger than the Crown Prince?" Having said this, Mrs. Nayland's expression was immediately full of pride and smug. "Master Zhu, do you know why the Crown Prince is here today? His Highness is here to marry our Feishue. Do you still want to snatch the marriage from the Crown Prince?" Zhu Yichun was shocked when he heard the words. "What did you say?" Zhu Zhongba was still out of the situation, staring straight at Nayland Feishue and wiping the saliva from the corner of his mouth from time to time. Nayland Zhangze coughed lightly, saying seemingly gently, "Master Zhu, we don't want to embarrass you, but you can see that the Crown Prince is interested in our little girl, and he personally brought betrothal gifts to propose. Master Zhu, you don't really want to disobey the Crown Prince, right? However, the marriage between our Nayland family and Zhu family was indeed agreed long ago. Since we agreed, we naturally can't renege, let alone let Master Zhu suffer a loss. What do you think, Master Zhu? I will marry my third daughter, Nayland Hashi, to your son. In this way, the Zhu family and the Nayland family are still in-laws, and the Crown Prince can also be satisfied. I wonder what does Master Zhu think of that?" Zhu Yichun's complexion changed for a while. Looking at his son's obsessive gaze at Nayland Feishue's outstanding talents, and thinking about Nayland Hashi's sallow face, he felt unwilling in his heart. No matter how, Nayland Feishue is better than Nayland Hashi and more suitable for my son. But the Crown Prince is sitting there, if we offend the Crown Prince, and he condemns our Zhu family. Zhu Yichun weighed in his mind, but in the end he could only compromise. He gritted his teeth and was about to agree. Suddenly, the Crown Prince, who had been sitting silently, stood up and said, "Wait a minute." Seeing everyone looking over, Shangguanqi smiled slightly, then he put his hands behind his back and slowly said, "Dr. Nayland, have you misunderstood my intention? It is true that I want to propose the lady of the Nayland family, but I want to propose to the third miss of the Nayland family, Nayland Hashi." As he said, he nodded slightly at Nayland Zhangze, showing an expression as if he were noble. "Dr. Nayland, I want to marry Miss Nayland Hashi as my concubine, so Dr. Nayland, please fulfill my wish." As soon as this remark came out, everyone present was stupefied. There was a weird silence in the main hall. Nayland Feishue's pitiful expression was still on her face. She was frozen at this moment. She looked like a joke. Mrs. Nayland, who was still smug just now, was full of astonishment and disbelief. Her face looked pale. Nayland Zhangze was even more shocked. Originally, he had prepared high-sounding words to say, but at this time they were all stuck in his throat. Please go to https://www. Novel updates. CC The King of Hell is Genius Pampered Wife to read the latest chapters for free. Even Nalan Ziyun, who was originally watching a good show by the side, was dumbfounded. There was a bad feeling in his heart. His Highness has never seen Nalan Hashi, why would he suddenly want to marry her as his concubine? Could it be, because I mentioned the special physique of Nalan Hashi to His Highness, and it made him interested in it? Thinking of this, Nalan Ziyun couldn't sit still. He mentioned Nalan Hashi to His Highness at the time because he wanted to arouse Nalan Feishua's jealousy and let her kill Hashi. What he said about Nalan Hashi's pure yin physique, and it could help the martial artists to quickly advance their cultivation, were all nonsense. If His Highness marries her and finds that Nalan Hashi is completely useless for his cultivation, and she is even an ugly woman, he may put the blame on me. Nalan Ziyun scolded Nalan Hashi thousands of times in his heart, but he forced a smile and broke the silence in the hall. His Highness, I remember that you and my third sister did not meet each other, why would you want to marry her? Hearing Nalan Ziyun's words, Nalan Zhengze also suddenly recovered. He quickly said, His Highness, I'm also surprised. Why would you want to marry Hashi? You should know that my third daughter is just a normal mortal. She isn't qualified to be the crown prince's concubine. Shangguan Qi glanced at Nalan Ziyun and smiled faintly. Ziyun should know the reason better than others, right? What's more, even Shi Yu is interested in Nalan Third Miss. How could Third Miss be just an ordinary person? As he said firmly, Dr. Nalan, why? Am I not qualified to marry Nalan family's third miss as a concubine? No. As soon as Shangguan Qi said this, Nalan Ziyun and Nalan Zhengze's faces looked extremely ugly. At this time, Nalan Feishue finally recovered. The dullness on her face turned into incredible resentment and shock. She screamed, No, this is impossible. Brother Prince, you obviously like me. Why would you want to marry Nalan Hashi, that ugly woman? Back in Fanyun Mountain, you were very caring for me. You must like me. Prince brother, can you quickly tell me that you are here to marry me? Zhu Yichun also saw that the situation was wrong at this time. He sneered and said, So, it turns out that His Highness wants to marry third miss of Nalan Mansion, then it's just right. Nalan Feishue has an engagement with our Zhu family. If the two marriages are settled, Nalan Mansion will have double happiness. Zhu Zhongba comfortably showed the affectionate expression, and he reached out to Nalan Feishue, Sister Feishue, you will be mine from now on, don't touch me. You fat pig, get out of the way. Nalan Feishue let out a sharp scream. She launched a wind blade with her hand at Zhu Zhongba. Zhu Zhongba didn't defend at all. Seeing that the wind blade was about to hit Zhu Zhongba, Zhu Yichun rushed out in time to block the attack for Zhu Zhongba. Zhu Yichun's face immediately sank and looked at Nalan Zhengze coldly. Dr. Nalan, His Highness has said that he is going to marry the third miss of Nalan Mansion. Do you still want to go back on your words to reject the marriage with Zhu family? Nalan Zhengze's face was pale. He couldn't speak for a while. Please go to https://www. Novel updates. CC The King of Hell is Genius Pampered Wife to read the latest chapters for free. At this moment, Nalan Ziyun suddenly said, Your Highness, you haven't met my third sister, right? Why don't you wait until you meet my third sister before deciding which lady to marry from the Nalan family? When Nalan Ziyun said this, Nalan Feishue and Mrs. Nalan were immediately happy. Nalan Feishue nodded repeatedly and said, Yes, brother Prince, as long as you see that ugly monster, you will never want to marry her. After that, she glared at the maid who was aside, and sternly said, Hurry up and call Nalan Hashi. After a while, Hashi, dressed in plain clothes, was brought up by the maid. As soon as Hashi appeared, she immediately attracted everyone's attention. but most people were feeling contemptuous. Naylan Hush's appearance was too lackluster. She didn't have Naylan Feishua's exquisite and graceful curves and no snow-white skin. She had a sallow face. Black patches were around her eyes, and her eyelids were swollen. Zhu Zhongba could even recognize Hushi at the first glance. However, he was frightened after being hit by Hushi the first 2 times. When he saw Hushi, his first reaction wasn't angry, but he shrank his neck, just hoping that she would not see him. Although the time for the slave's ownership was long over, the slave mark in Zhu Zhongba's mind was only for temporary handover, and it would not be kept for long. But Zhu Zhongba's fear of Hushi had penetrated into his bones. What's more, compared to the hatred of Hushi, he now wants to marry Naylan Feishua, the beautiful girl. Otherwise, as long as he thought of marrying Hushi, the ugly monster, and being punched and kicked by her every day, Zhu Zhongba could not help but shudder. The moment Shangguan Qi saw Naylan Hushi, his brows frowned. He really didn't expect Naylan Hushi to be so ugly. She looked so shriveled like a little daylily. She didn't have the charm of Naylan Feishua at all. Such a woman, if she was placed in the crown prince's palace, she wasn't even qualified to be a maid. When Naylan Ziyun saw the crown prince showed a serious contempt and disgust after seeing Hushi, he couldn't help but laugh and say, "Your Highness, this is my third sister, Naylan Hushi." As he said, he got closer to the prince and lowered his voice, "Your Highness, my third sister is really just a mortal. The special physique that I spoke of, it was her who told me. But I later only got to know that it was a lie made by my third sister to win my father's favor. In fact, my third sister is really just an ordinary person, and maybe because she was raised in the courtyard since she was a child, she may be a little rude." The crown prince frowned a little tighter upon hearing this. In fact, when Naylan Ziyun told him about Naylan Hush's pure yin physique, he also sent someone to investigate. The results of the investigation did not find out what kind of physique she was, but after hearing someone describe her ugly appearance and cowardly personality, he had lost the interest. But on breaking Spirit Mountain, Shangguan Qi accidentally knew that the young miracle healer Shiyu was asking about Naylan Hushi, and he couldn't help but become curious again. Who was Shiyu? He was the most dazzling new star in Yangjing City in recent years. He cured Ouyang Haoshuan's terminal illness, solved the blood-drunk poison in Sealed Dragon Domain's secret territory, and he was favored by His Royal Highness King of Hell. Even the little Princess Shen Qingchua of the Shen family, and their Qixing Palace's Xie Chen, both respected him very much. Not to mention the lofty Feng family, that the Jinling royal family did not dare to go against, actually repeatedly suffered a loss to Shiyu. They could not do anything with him. From these things, it could be seen how powerful this Shiyu was now. I have never heard of a woman Shiyu pays attention to, then why does he pay attention to an unremarkable Naylan Hushi? Is it because Naylan Hushi really has a pure yin physique? So what if she doesn't have the pure yin physique? As long as I can connect with Shiyu through Naylan Hushi, I will have countless medicinal pills at that time. Maybe the whole Shengde Hall will be mine. Thinking of this, Shangguan Qi's eyes darkened a bit. Isn't it just a little side concubine? So what if she is ugly? I can just leave her alone after marrying her. For Shangguan Qi, improving strength and political power was the most important thing now. Naylan Ziyun still whispered in his ear, "Your Highness, you see that my second sister is really in love with you, and her cultivation qualifications are good. Instead of marrying an ugly woman with a useless physique, it's better, Ziyun, you don't need to say more." Shangguan Qi interrupted him suddenly. The pair of eyes looked at Hushi with a hint of doing a charity. "I have long admired Naylan Third Miss's intelligence and dignity, and I don't care about her appearance and aptitude at all. I want to marry Naylan Third Miss. Is Dr. Naylan still reluctant?" Naylan Zhengzi's face looked even more gloomy and ugly. He wanted to reject, but he couldn't go against the crown prince's power. The crown prince was different from the Zhu family. If he agrees, and what if Naylan Hushi uses Enlinghua's relics to seek favor from the crown prince, wouldn't Naylan family get nothing in the end? When Naylan Feishua heard Shangguan Qi's words, She screamed without thinking, "Prince brother, how is this ugly trash worthy of you? How can you really admire her? I'm the one whom you should admire. Such an ugly monster like Nalan Hashi should marry to Zhuzhongba, that fat pig. The prince brother, look at me. I'm Nalan Feishue, and I should be your concubine." Shangguan Qi snorted as if he hadn't heard Nalan Feishue's shout. He felt a little contempt for Nalan Feishue's behavior in forcing a marriage. He encountered many women who want to marry him like this, and in his house, there weren't really any women that were more beautiful than Nalan Feishue. Now for him, of course Nalan Hashi, a woman who was valued by Shiyu, was more important. Zhu Ichun was trembling in anger. Nalan Feishue said these words, "Is she trying to put shame on my Zhu family?" Hashi really unexpectedly heard the conversation between several people. "Shangguan Qi wants to marry me, a side concubine? He even disregards my ugly appearance and useless physique. What is he thinking?" Qing Luan, who was following Hashi, looked even more unsightly. "Hashi is the future princess of the King of Hell Mansion and my master's sweetheart. Why are they coveting our princess? Are they tired of living?" Azhu lowered her face and secretly crushed an inscribed jade slip in her arms. Shangguan Qi straightened his clothes and turned to Hashi, showing an expression that he thought to be elegant. He said gently, "Third miss, I want to marry as my concubine. Are you willing?" After Shangguan Qi said this, he waited for Hashi to weep with joy, nod desperately, and beg him to marry her back. Please go to https://www. Novel updates. CC The King of Hell is Genius Pampered Wife to read the latest chapters for free. But then, he heard two decisive words. "Not willing." Shangguan Qi picked his ears and looked at Hashi in disbelief. "Third miss, did you not hear my question clearly just now?" Hashi smiled slowly. Her facial features weren't outstanding usually. When she smiled, her eyes became brighter than the stars and clearer than the crystals. However, there was a touch of coldness in her eyes. Hashi casually said, "Your Highness is so young, but your ears already. I said that I don't want to marry you as a concubine. Do you hear clearly this time? You." Shangguan Qi's face suddenly became gloomy. The other people in the room also dropped their jaws, and they were speechless for a long time. Shangguan Qi suppressed the raging anger in his mind, and he asked in a deep voice, "Nalan Hashi, you are just a concubine's daughter in the Nalan Mansion area. I'm the crown prince of the Jinling Kingdom, the future emperor. Am I still not worthy of you?" Hashi sneered without saying anything. The crown prince could not understand the sarcasm in this sneer. He thought she had her own reasons, and he couldn't help but cough and calmed his attitude. "Third miss, if you have something unspeakable that makes you not dare to agree on it, you can tell me. As the crown prince, is it that I can't help you out?" As he said, Shangguan Qi subtly glanced at Nalan Zhengze and Nalan Feishue. "Something unspeakable?" Hashi said casually, "I would rather be a beggar's wife than an emperor's concubine. Well, does this reason count?" When Hashi said this, there was a commotion in the hall. Shangguan Qi looked at her with contempt and disgust in his eyes. "It turns out that this woman rejected me because she doesn't want the position concubine and wants to become the real princess. With her ugly appearance and useless physique, she wants to become a princess. Isn't that a disgrace for me? It's already my greatest gift to give her the position of concubine. This woman is not yet satisfied. Her ambition is too big." The others couldn't help but look at Hashi mockingly. Such a useless daughter of a concubine actually has such an ambition. Is she not afraid of being laughed at? Nalan Ziyun saw the unsightly face of the crown prince, and her heart was full of gloat. Nalan Hashi, that idiot, thinks that she can earn a good future for herself by playing hard to get. Can she look at herself first? Now that she offends the crown prince, let's see how she can solve this. Hashi seemed to be totally unaware of the weird atmosphere of the hall. She just smiled and said, "Since the marriage has been rejected, if there isn't anything else, I will leave first." After speaking, she turned around and left. Shangguan Qi shouted furiously behind her back, "You stop." Hashi paused slightly, But she didn't turn around. She just raised her brows and looked in the direction of the door. The door was suddenly opened slowly by a manservant, and someone said excitedly, "Master, madam, the eldest miss is back." At the next moment, a woman wearing a yellow embroidered shirt and a white gauze slowly walked into the hall. The woman was only in her early 20s. She was tall, and she had exquisite features. Her black hair was combed up, revealing a smooth forehead and fierce eyebrows. Her whole body revealed a kind of cold and alienated breath, but it did not hinder the amazingness of her beauty. Please go to https://www. Novel updates. CC The King of Hell is Genius Pampered Wife to read the latest chapters for free. As soon as the woman walked in, Mrs. Nayland couldn't help but rushed over excitedly. She was speaking in a tremble. "Yurong, my daughter, you are finally back." Nayland Feishue also rushed into Nayland Yurong's arms and cried aggrievedly, "Elder sister, you are finally back, you must help Feishue." The person came in was Nayland Yurong, the most outstanding child in the generation of Nayland family. Regardless of her appearance or temperament, she was the best among the members of the Nayland family. In her early 30s, she was already a master of the peak of the meridian stage. Most importantly, she was also a fourth-rank doctor. She was even the disciple of Master Shukong, the elder of the Doctors' Association. Even if Nayland Feishue was equally charming and talented, she would seem ordinary and unremarkable standing with Nayland Yurong. This was the first time Hashi saw Nayland Yurong. Even in the memory of the original owner, she rarely saw the eldest miss of the Nayland family. Nayland Yurong calmly comforted Mrs. Nayland and Nayland Feishue before walking slowly into the hall. All eyes were looking at her. Both Zhu Zhongba's and Zhu Ichun's eyes widened, and Zhu Zhongba's saliva was dripping down. Shang Guanqi performed better than them, but Nayland Yurong's outstanding temperament and exquisite appearance still made him look a little infatuated. Nayland Yurong had long been accustomed to the behavior of these men when they saw her, and she slightly bowed to Nayland Zhengze. "Father, your daughter is back." "Great. It's great that you come back." Nayland Zhengze, who always looked solemn, revealed a kind smile when he saw Nayland Yurong. This daughter was the pride of Nayland family and the pride of Nayland Zhengze. Nayland Yurong nodded slightly to Shang Guanqi again, but she did not bow to him. She just said in a cold voice, "Greetings to the Your Highness." Shang Guanqi didn't feel humiliated at all, and he said quickly, "Miss, there is no need for that." Nayland Yurong finished the greeting with Shang Guanqi, then she turned her icy gaze to Hashi. She smiled slightly as she said, "I think this is the third sister who has caused turmoils in Nayland Mansion recently, right? Hearing your reputation isn't really as good as meeting you personally." Before Hashi could reply, Nayland Yurong's face suddenly sank and said coldly, "I just heard the third sister's arrogant words before stepping in. You said that you would rather be a beggar's wife than an emperor's concubine? But third sister, do you forget what your identity is? Whether you are a beggar's wife or an emperor's concubine, can you simply choose with your identity?" As soon as Nayland Yurong's words came out, Nayland Feishue immediately smiled and went along, "Elder sister is right. You're just a useless person, and you still dare to say don't want to be the emperor's concubine? It's really funny. Do you really think that Prince Brother will marry an ugly woman like you as his wife?" Hashi looked at Nayland Yurong. Under the strong pressure of Nayland Yurong, her eyes did not fluctuate at all. The smile on her mouth was plain. She said modestly, "What does elder sister mean by this? Please forgive your third sister, I can't understand you. Elder sister has always been a self-righteous person. Before, when Brother Han of the Shueyu sect came to propose, elder sister said that even if Shueyu sect is powerful, you will never marry someone you look down on. Why? When it is your third sister's turn, can't your third sister look down on the position of the crown prince's concubine? Isn't elder sister too double-standard?" Or is it that the Naylan family nowadays has fallen to the point where they have to rely on their children's marriage to gain power? The big sister must be careful. After all, the most valuable and the most possible person who can exchange power for marriage for the Naylan family is you, elder sister. Naylan Yurong was stunned by what Hushi said. She couldn't regain her thought for a long while. In her impression, although she had never seen Naylan Hushi for several times, in her impression, Hushi had always been a cowardly and useless little girl who could only cry. But now, under the pressure of my own spiritual pressure, Hushi dares to refute me. For many years, in this Naylan family, even my father seldom refutes me, not to mention other people. Now this Naylan Hushi, where does her courage come from? Naylan Feishue grabbed Naylan Yurong's sleeves and snorted coldly, elder sister, she wants to be a beggar's wife anyway, so let her marry the fat pig, Zhu Zhongba. Being Zhu Zhongba's wife is better than being a beggar's wife, she should thank us. Naylan Yurong glanced at Zhu Zhongba who was on the side, and a hint of disgust flashed in her eyes. She instead smiled, Feishue is right. Since third sister is not willing to be the prince's concubine, let her marry the Zhu family and be their wife. What does father think about it? Naylan Zhangze immediately showed a satisfied smile. He nodded and said, of course it is good. Naylan Yurong really deserved to be his most beloved daughter. She immediately solved the dilemma that troubled him. Then it assessed better to settle the marriage between third sister and Zhu family today, and let third sister marry Zhu Zhongba as his wife in a few days. Naylan Yurong smiled and said undoubtedly, in addition, since the crown prince came to propose, I think you just want to form a bond with our Naylan family. Since my third sister isn't willing in marrying you, why don't you marry my second sister? She is talented and clever since young, and we have the same mother. If Naylan Feishue marries the crown prince as wife, I will definitely help from the side. Naylan Yurong emphasized the word wife. Naylan Feishue was the daughter of Naylan Mansion and her blood sister to Naylan Yurong. Unlike Naylan Hushi who was born by a concubine, Naylan Feishue wasn't out of her league to be the crown prince's wife. What's more, just the crown prince of a small Jinling kingdom, Naylan Yurong didn't put him in her eyes at all. Shangguan Qi frowned. He glanced at Hushi. He wanted to marry her. However, when he remembered her refusal just now that put him on the spot, he was full of hatred and did not want to refute. What's more, Naylan Yurong's identity was special. If he marries Naylan Feishue, she and Master Shukong would really be able to help her in the future, which was also beneficial to him. Since the crown prince did not speak, it meant acquiescence. As Naylan Zhangze was very happy, Zhu Zhongba, who had been staring lustfully at Naylan Feishue and Naylan Yurong, suddenly woke up just as the marriage was about to settle. Thinking that he was going to marry Naylan Hushi, Zhu Zhongba couldn't help but yelled like a pig, I don't want to marry that woman, I don't want to marry Naylan Hushi. Father, I definitely don't want to marry that ugly monster. If I marry that witch home, I will definitely not survive the wedding night. Zhu Zhongba wanted to yell this sentence. But when he looked at Hushi's indifferent gaze, he trembled in fright and never dared to talk nonsense again. Zhu Ichun's face also looked very ugly. Please go to https://www. Novel updates. CC The King of Hell is Genius Pampered Wife to read the latest chapters for free. The Naylan family's attitude that they didn't pay attention to their Zhu family at all made him feel aggrieved, but he couldn't vent it. His son wanted to marry the legitimate daughter, but now it became the concubine's daughter. A beautiful wife now became an ugly one. How could they reconcile? Zhu Ichun gritted his teeth under great pressure. Dr. Naylan, don't forget, Naylan's second miss and my family, Zhongba had an intimate relationship before. Master Zhu, please be careful with your word. Naylan Yurong interrupted Zhu Ichun coldly. His voice was cold, and he released his spirit pressure quietly. I think Master Zhu must have made a mistake, right? Someone who has had an intimate relationship with Zhu Zhongba was not Feishue, but Hushi, right? It's just that Master Zhu was confused, so you recognized the wrong person. Master Zhu, Am I right? The sweat on Zhuichun's forehead fell like rain, and his face became more and more ugly. Zhu Zhongba looked even worse. He was trembling all over. The smell of urine spread from his crotch, and his face was full of perplex and fear. Zhuichun couldn't resist the pressure, so he could only say in a tremble, "Yes, yes, we Zhu family will want to marry. Third miss. That's the best." Nalan Yurong showed a satisfied smile, and the spirit pressure instantly reduced. Nalan Feishue flew next to Nalan Yurong like a butterfly. She held Yurong's arm and said softly, "Elder sister, fortunately, you are here, otherwise mother and I will be bullied to death by that slut. Elder sister, you are the best for me." Nalan Yurong smiled arrogantly, staring at Hushi with disdain. "You are just a mere mortal. Do you really think you can turn the sky? Second sister, you have to look farther. Get along with Crown Prince after you marry him. As for the ants, just trample them to death." Nalan Feishue nodded again and again. Her eyes were full of excitement and triumph, and occasionally she looked at Shangguan Qi with shyness and happiness. Seeing that the situation was set, Nalan Zhengze coughed lightly and said with a delighted smile, "Since Master Zhu and His Highness have both agreed, then this marriage, Master, 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 Madam." An anxious shout came from the door. The manservant who ran in stumbled, his face was panic. When he crossed the threshold, he almost tripped and fell down. "What is it to panic about? Where is your manner?" Nalan Zhengze's face immediately turned black. "Have you not seen how many distinguished guests are in the room? Don't you know how shameful it is?" But the manservant didn't seem to hear Nalan Zhengze's blame at all. He knelt on the ground and stammered, Master, someone is visiting outside the door." "Why, there are people visiting again?" A look of surprise appeared on Nalan Zhengze's face. "What the hell is going on today?" "All sorts of matters happen all together," Nalan Zhengze said solemnly. "Whoever is visiting, let him give the greeting card. Yes. It's King of Hell Mansion, it's the butler of King of Hell Mansion." The manservant suddenly raised his voice. He was almost growling. King of Hell Mansion is also here to propose marriage. Another one comes to propose marriage? Nalan Zhengze's first reaction was that why all people chose to propose marriage today. But the next moment, he reacted to the guest that the manservant was talking about. "You, who are you talking about? Who is here to propose marriage?" Nalan Zhengze suddenly stood up and asked with a trembling voice. The manservant swallowed, and he felt like he was dreaming. "It is Butler Nan of the King of Hell Mansion. He said that he is here to propose marriage on behalf of His Royal Highness King of Hell. Please go to https://www.readlightnovel. CC the King of Hell is Genius Pampered Wife to read the latest chapters for free. As soon as these words came out, the main hall of Nalan Mansion fell into a strange silence again. And this time, except for Hushi, everyone's faces were incredibly shocked. Hushi glanced at Qing Luan next to her, and Qing Luan immediately showed an expression of "I'm innocent, I haven't done anything." Nalan Zhengze froze for a while, then he recovered abruptly. He immediately shouted, quickly welcome the person. Let him come in." Everyone knew Butler Nan of the King of Hell Mansion in Yangjing City. He was the master of the Gold Core stage, and he was responsible for the external affairs of the King of Hell Mansion. It could be said that the presence of Butler Nan represented the meaning of King of Hell Nangong Yu. The manservant stumbled and ran out, but Nalan Zhengze quickly wondered, how can King of Hell come to propose marriage? Even Shangguan Qi was shocked. That was King of Hell. Don't see that the Shangguan family was the royal family of Jinling Kingdom, but they were incomparable compared to King of Hell, Nangong Yu. He was the only nascent soul stage master in the Jinling Kingdom who was only 20 years old. The Iron Kirin army in his hand could block the fierce magical beast army from the magical beast forest. The four major sects of the Miluo continent completely looked down on Jinling Kingdom, but in the face of Nangong Yu, no sect dared not take him seriously. Even the arrogant Feng family wanted to have a marriage with Nangong Yu. It was just that Nangong you didn't like Feng Lianying. But now, the aloof king of hell came to Naylan family to propose marriage? What secrets were hidden in the Naylan family? How could it attract Nangong Yu's attention? Everyone was shocked and puzzled. At this time, Naylan Yurong, who had always had a cold and proud expression, suddenly flushed and showed a shy expression. Mrs. Naylan's eyes were keen. She noticed her daughter acting abnormally. She couldn't help asking, "Yurong, what's the matter with you?" Naylan Yurong tried her best to maintain her cold and arrogant expression, but her words still revealed infinite joy and contentment. "I probably know why King of Hell comes to propose marriage." "What?" Mrs. Naylan and Naylan Zhangze exclaimed at the same time. Mrs. Naylan was even more surprised and delighted, and she said in disbelief, "Yurong, do you know King of Hell? Are you too?" Naylan Yurong blushed instantly, showing the tenderness of a little girl. She said softly, "On my way home this time, I passed by the Qingming Peak on the edge of the magical beast forest, and I just ran into the rank 5 magical beast rhinoceros. Fortunately, King of Hell helped out in time, so I was not injured." "Oh, it turns out to be a hero saved the beauty." "Good, it's great," Mrs. Naylan said excitedly, "because King of Hell saved you, so you two fell in love at first sight?" King of Hell just met you, and he comes to propose marriage just after a few days. It seems that he really loves you. Naylan Yurong pulled Mrs. Naylan's sleeve and said, "Mother, stop. I'm so shy. If you can really marry the King of Hell mansion, then our Naylan mansion will be greatly promoted." Mrs. Naylan grabbed her daughter's hand, and her voice was a little trembling. Everyone thought that King of Hell and the Ice Lotus Fairy are a pair, and no one dared to think about the position of King of Hell's wife. Now that Feng Lianying had ruined her virginity and future on her own, everyone is eyeing on the position of King of Hell's wife. "I didn't expect Yurong, you can actually get the favor of King of Hell. If marriage is known by the public, how many women in the Miluo continent will envy you?" Please go to https://www.readlightnovel. CC The King of Hell is Genius Pampered Wife to read the latest chapters for free. Naylan Yurong was proud and vain with her cheeks blushing, but she said arrogantly, "How can Feng Lianying, a shameless woman, be worthy of King of Hell? Mother, you don't know excellent, handsome and attractive King of Hell is." Mrs. Naylan had never seen her noble eldest daughter showed such a shy attitude. Knowing that she liked His Royal Highness King of Hell, and now that King of Hell came to propose marriage, it was really, there was nothing better than this. Naylan Zhangze was even more surprised and delighted when he heard what his eldest daughter said. "That's King of Hell. If Yurong can really marry King of Hell, then Naylan Mansion is equivalent to riding the blue cloud ladder, a path to the higher position. We don't have to worry about not having the chance to rise in the future." Who dares to say that King of Hell Mansion's in-laws are not the largest family in Yangjing City? As long as Yurong can really marry King of Hell, even if I can't get an Lingyue's relic, it doesn't matter. Thinking of this, Naylan Zhangze paced in the room with excitement. He couldn't wait for the manservant to bring the person in. In this way, the Crown Prince and Zhu family were naturally treated indifferently. Zhu family was still fine, but Shangguan Qi was different. Seeing such a scene, he naturally felt unhappy. But thinking that the person who proposed marriage coming from the King of Hell Mansion, Shangguan Qi could only swallow back his dissatisfaction. King of Hell, Nangong Yu, was by no means a Jinling kingdom's royal family could offend. Hashi and Qing Luan heard all Naylan Yurong's words clearly. Hashi narrowed her eyes slightly, her eyes were gleaming. Nangong Yu, the guy who attracted all sorts of women, just drove away a Feng Lianying, then he attracted another Naylan Yurong. Both fell in love at first sight. Me. Should I congratulate him? Azhu stared at Naylan Yurong angrily, and she thought in her heart, "My master is only 20 years old, and this old woman is in her 30s. She even dares to miss my master. She isn't even comparable to Princess's hair. She even dares to think about marrying into King of Hell Mansion. She is simply dreaming." After a while, Butler Nan walked slowly into the main hall. He looked only around the age of 40. He had a gentle and elegant temperament. The spirit pressure was completely kept inside his body. If one didn't recognize him, he was just a middle-aged man with no cultivation base and a good temper. But everyone present did not dare to look down upon this Butler Nan. This was King of Hell Nangongyu's closest confidant besides Qing Long, Bai Hu, Zhu Qiu, and Xian Wu. He took care of all the internal and external affairs of King of Hell Mansion. Moreover, he was also a master at the peak of the gold core stage. As soon as Butler Nan entered the door, his eyes flashed a strange light. After that, he looked at Hashi and Qing Luan like there was nothing unusual. Dr. Naylan, sorry for visiting abruptly. Dr. Naylan, please don't be offended. Not at all. Dr. Naylan hurriedly replied respectfully, his face full of fear and flattery. Butler Nan smiled slightly and said, I believe that Dr. Naylan has already known the intention of my visit. I'm here to represent my master, King of Hell, Nan Gongyu, to propose marriage to Naylan family's miss. Although Naylan Zhangze was mentally prepared, he still took a deep breath upon hearing this sentence. The hands hanging by his side trembled slightly because of excitement, and he also couldn't maintain the calmness in his voice. Bu. Butler Nan, you are here to propose marriage for King of Hell. May I ask, is he marrying my daughter to be his wife, or please go to https://www.readlightnovel. CC the King of Hell is genius pampered wife to read the latest chapters for free. Naturally, wife. Butler Nan continued Naylan Zhangze's words without any hesitation. He decisively increased the favorability for his master. My master never has a wife or a concubine. He will only marry a wife in his life, and he will not have a second woman. Now that I'm here on behalf of my master to propose marriage, he is naturally marrying a wife. Mrs. Naylan let out a short exclamation, and she tightly grasped Naylan Yurong's hand. The joy and excitement on Naylan Yurong's face almost overflowed, but she was a little dizzy. Her eyes looked blurred, and she almost fainted due to the good news. Even Naylan Feishue, who was so happy just now because she was about to marry Shangguan Qi, looked at Naylan Yurong with envy when she heard Butler Nan's words. That was King of Hell, who was 100 times noble than the prince brother. Now he wants to marry my sister, and he even promised to marry only my sister in this life. Naylan Yurong is so lucky. Butler Nan smiled slightly and continued, the dowry gifts that King of Hell instructed me to send here are in the courtyard. Because of the rush, I only prepared some 5th and 6th grade magic weapons, and some rare treasures. Ms. Naylan, please don't be depressed by the shabby gifts, other dowry gifts will be delivered in a few days. The magic weapons of the 5th and 6th grade are still shabby. How much King of Hell Mansion is giving for this marriage? Naylan Yurong covered her thumping heart, and said, we won't detest it, why would we? As long as King of Hell has this intention, I will be satisfied. Butler Nan looked at her in a strange gaze, revealing a complicated expression. Naylan Zhangze bit the tip of his tongue and forced himself to calm down from the excitement, lest losing his manner. He then cleared his throat and said, King of Hell can be fond of my little girl Yurong. That is Yurong's blessing. How can we detest for the gifts? I will dislike the lack of offer. I'll go take out the written marriage proposal to settle this marriage. Butler Nan, please wait for a moment. Having said that, he went to his study room. Wait a minute. Butler Nan suddenly spoke and interrupted Naylan Zhangze's actions. Just when everyone's eyes were on him, Butler Nan smiled and said, I wonder if Dr. Naylan has mistaken something. The person that our Lord, King of Hell's going to marry, is not Naylan Yurong, but Naylan family's third miss, Naylan Hashi. In the main hall, there was a strange silence for the third time. Everyone looked at the yellow-skinned Naylan Hashi like a ghost and Butler Nan who was smiling contentedly. Butler Nan looked resolute, letting them took the posture that I was not moving, let them look at it, and secretly showed Hushie a friendly and gentle smile. Finally, Mrs. Nayland, who was going to faint with excitement, suddenly woke up and screamed, "Impossible. How is King of Hell marrying Nayland Hushie? She is just an ugly and disgusting trash." Nayland Yurong also had a distorted and hideous expression. She could no longer maintain her arrogant posture. She said in a deep tone, "Butler Nan, think about it more clearly. Did you hear the wrong command of King of Hell? Is he actually asking you to propose marriage to the elder miss of Nayland Mansion, but you heard third miss instead?" Butler Nan raised his eyes and sneered faintly. "Is Miss Nayland implying that I'm an old fool who can't even hear Moo Master's orders clearly? Please go to https://www.readlightnovel. CC The King of Hell is Genius Pampered Wife to read the latest chapters for free. You're tuning in to the Dreamy Chapters YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.